The anime starts off on a seemingly ordinary day. Everyone goes about their business, unaware of the tragic fate humanity is about to experience. Soon enough, people start having heart attacks randomly, and chaos ensues as drivers and pilots share the same fate. In the apocalyptic-like wasteland, we see a pink-haired woman leading an army of cloaked figures. Amidst the chaos, we see a ragtag band of orphans running back to their home, the Hyakuya orphanage. Among the children, we see our two main characters, Mikaela Hyakuya, a blonde, blue-eyed, selfless, and friendly boy, and Yuuichirou Hyakuya, a moody, dark-haired, green-eyed boy. As the group keeps running, an announcement blares, informing us that a fatal virus has been released on humans to punish them for their sins. The announcement also notes that there is no cure and that their fate has been sealed. Inside the orphanage, the kids are shocked to find their kind caretaker having succumbed to the same fate as the rest of humanity. The next moment, the announcement continues, noting that any child below the age of 13 has been spared, and the third progenitor, Cruel Tapes, is collecting every child. Not a moment later, a cloaked figure appears at the orphanage window, and with a simple touch, the window shatters into pieces. Another cloaked man casually opens the door, and soon enough, the children find themselves in a military convoy heading to an unknown location. 4 years later, we now find out that the cloaked figures are vampires, and they are treating the children they have abducted as livestock, harvesting their blood in exchange for apparently keeping them safe. Yuuichirou, now 12 years old, hates the vampires and the way they treat them as objects, refusing to even eat the disgusting food provided. Meanwhile, Mikaela manages to maintain a more positive attitude, noting that at the very least they're still breathing and that they weren't separated from their little family. Yu gets into conflict with some vampires, which he refers to as fangs, in an attempt to seek justice for two little girls who are harmed by the bloodsuckers for playing in front of them. Although Yu tries his best to make the fangs apologize, he is no match for these supernatural beings. Just as he is about to be thrown off the bridge, Mika tries to plead for his forgiveness. Thankfully, Farid Bathory, a vampire noble and the 7th progenitor, happens to walk by, saving Yu from certain death. That the only reason he even stepped in is because Mika has been giving him his blood in private for various benefits, like real food and some privileges. We now see a flashback to when Yu and Mika first met. Yu went from being an antisocial loner after being abandoned by his parents and almost killed by his father. Mika offered him a chance to become part of their little family, just like the other orphans. Eventually, the two became brothers, ready to do anything to help each other. Surprisingly, their sister Akane informs Yu that Mika somehow managed to get the ingredients to make real curry, and Yu now realizes that Mika has been giving his blood to the noble for their sake. Later that evening, Mika returns from Farid's mansion, informing Yu that he managed to get him a pistol so that he can fight these vampires whom he hates so much. Mika also gives him a map of the city they're in, which they can use to finally escape this cursed place. At night, the two boys lead their family to the escape route they found on the map, and although they manage to avoid danger along the way, they're shocked to find Farid waiting for them at the city's exit. He reveals that he has been manipulating poor Mika all along. Without wasting any more time, he directly grabs one of their little sisters and drains her of her blood, throwing her lifeless corpse on the floor. Yu is enraged and tries to attack Farid with his pistol, but the noble easily dodges. Meanwhile, Mika is horrified, realizing that his actions have put his whole family in danger. As Farid continues taking care of their siblings, Mika turns to Yu, determined to at least allow him to escape. He grabs the gun and dashes towards Farid, but before he can do anything, Farid instantly impales him with his hand and removes the arm holding the gun. Yu manages to grab the pistol as it falls to the ground and gets close enough to headshot Farid, seemingly killing him. With his dying breath, Mika tells his brother to escape, but Yu refuses to abandon his family. In a desperate attempt, he tries to drag Mika to the exit, knowing that Mika has no chance of survival. Mika angrily shouts for Yu to leave. Barely managing to hold back his tears, Yu dashes to the exit with a heavy heart. Mika is happy to pass away, knowing that this was the first time Yu called them his family. Outside, as Yu shouts out in pain and grief, he stumbles in the snow, only to be found by a group of humans who ask him if he wants to help them in their quest to eradicate the vampires. Hugging the man after losing his entire family, Yu states that he's ready to do anything if it means killing every vampire in the world. 4 years later, we see a more mature Yu in a military uniform. casually walking among the debris of the destroyed city. Yu remembers the time he spent with his family in the vampire city where they were all happy together. However, their happiness ended abruptly when the vampires murdered them. Yu is also tormented by the thought of leaving Mika behind to die while escaping. 4 years later, Yu fights a monster known as a Horseman of John to take revenge against the Bloodsuckers, disobeying his orders and resulting in being suspension and punishment. To return to the army, he has to cooperate and make friends, but he is struggling to do so. Shinoa Hiragi becomes his surveillance officer, tasked with keeping him in check and making sure he doesn't make any violations. Yu remembers meeting Yuuichirou, the man who found him on that cold night and promised him the opportunity to kill vampires. However, he has not kept his promise as of yet. In the locker room, Yu notices some teens bullying another boy. Although he initially wants to ignore the situation, he decides to step in after one of the bullies threatens to feed the boy to the vampires. Shinoa informs him that fighting civilians is a violation, so with no other alternative, Yu ends up getting beaten and becoming the errand boy of these bullies. The boy, Yoichi Satomi, apologizes to Yu for involving him, and notes that he has been trying to get close to one of the bullies, in the hopes of using his supposed connections to join the elite unit, the Moon Demon Company, and get revenge for his sister who was killed by a vampire after she managed to protect him. Later, a vampire escapes from a laboratory, and Yu decides to avenge his family by killing her. He interferes before she can bite a student and engages in a fight with her, although the vampire seems to easily regenerate every injury Yu manages to inflict. Yoichi appears and manages to stop the vampire from draining the other student's blood. Enraged, she attacks Yoichi, but Yu blocks her attack. In a fit of anger, she grabs Yu by the throat and jumps out of the window with him, but he manages to stab her in the stomach as he lands on the ground. However, the vampire is unharmed and prepares to deliver the finishing blow. Thankfully, Gurren appears and manages to end the vampire with his cursed sword. As Yu falls unconscious after his new friend Yoichi falls on him while hugging him, he dreams about his family being happy that he has finally managed to make a new friend. They tell him that they can finally stop worrying about him. As they leave, Mika's image tells Yu not to live for revenge and to take care of his friend instead. Yamanaka prevents his companion, Yuji, from opening a room covered in spell tags. As they leave, Yuji looks back and the door opens slightly. On the school's rooftop, Yu receives a love letter from the girl he saved from the vampire. Shinoa shows Yu her cursed gear, Shikama Doji, which amazes him. Yu attacks Shinoa to test the weapon's strength, but she overpowers him with no effort. Yamanaka and Shishido chase after Yoichi, begging to become his disciples. They want help in finding their friend Yuji, who entered the Forbidden Chamber and never returned. Yu, Shinoa, and Yoichi agree to help and go to the chamber. As they enter, Shinoa explains that the weapon inside holds a demon weaker, but similar to her cursed scythe. Yu tries to seize the cursed axe from Yuji, who is controlled by a demon as he desires more power to face the vampires. The demon attempts to possess Yu, but he expels it after seeing through its illusion of his brother. After seeing this, Shinoa says she will recommend Yu for the training class. In the vampire castle, in the same place where Yu managed to escape from, Farid nonchalantly calls out to an older and surprisingly very much alive Mika. In a ruined city district abandoned by both vampires and the Japanese Imperial Demon Army, a horseman of the apocalypse attacks a group of humans. Thankfully, Mika, now a vampire, intervenes and kills the horseman, earning the gratitude of the humans. One of his fellow vampires mocks him for trying to protect the humans, since in his eyes they are only livestock for them to feed on. However, he praises Mika for his strength and asks if he really became a vampire by drinking the blood of the third progenitor. Mika remains unfazed by his taunts and casually walks away, noting that he has no interest in proving anything. While the vampires claim the district and announce that they will protect the humans in exchange for their blood, Mika is approached by a girl he saved who offers her blood to him. Looking at her, he reminisces about how cruel Tapes turned him into a vampire 4 years ago. In a flashback, we see that shockingly, Farid was only pretending to be dead. As the seventh progenitor, he could have easily evaded the bullet even at such a close range. Cruel theorizes that he allowed Yu to escape on purpose. She demands an explanation from Farid since one of her two Seraphs managed to run away, while the other is on the verge of death, referring to Yu and Mika. After a brief altercation with Farid, where she casually smacks him away like a fly and pins him to the ground, Cruel then turns to Mika, offering him eternal life. However, without thinking twice, he refuses with his dying breath. Annoyed and claiming he has no choice, she forcefully feeds Mika her blood while kissing him. Back at the high school, Yu stumbles into a pink-haired student, and without saying much, the two hotheads start fist-fighting. Shortly later, a bruised Yu meets with Yuuichirou and Shinoa, ready to attend their special lesson with the Moon Demon Squad Lieutenant Colonel, Guren. After a short introduction, Yu goes to take his seat but is shocked to find the same pink-haired student sleeping with a book on his face in his chair. The two recognize each other, and soon enough, they start bickering again, while the rest watch on in mild amusement. After the lesson, the pink-haired student, introduced as Shiho Kimazuki, visits Guren in his office, claiming that with his talent, aptitude, and top grades in every subject, he should be guaranteed a trial for the highest-ranked Black Demon Series cursed weapons. Guren nonchalantly questions his motive for wanting to rush and gain strength. Although he notes that he knows of his situation with needing money and unrestricted treatment for his little sister, which the Moon Demon Company can provide. Guren points out that in his current unstable state of mind, the demon within the cursed gear will easily feed on his desire and possess him. Shiho isn't convinced, so Guren releases his cursed sword, demonstrating how demons feed on rage and desperation, while Shiho can only tremble in fear, unable to move. Guren ends by saying that the current Shiho has no chance to wield a cursed weapon. Later, the students begin their combat test against some cursed army puppets. Being handcuffed to each other, Yu and Shiho have a rocky start, dragging and bumping into each other. The test is momentarily paused as Shiho is summoned to the hospital since his sister is in critical condition. Afraid that he might fail to make the selection for the cursed gear, Shiho decides to continue the test instead. However, when Yu finds out about his situation, he punches Shiho, saying that he'll never see his sister again if she dies. Now in the hospital room, the doctor informs Shiho that his sister managed to push through this time. However, with the current treatment, she won't be able to survive much longer. Shiho resolutely states that he'll soon join the Moon Demon Company so his sister will receive the best treatment. Meanwhile, Yu can only listen dejectedly as he's still handcuffed to Shiho. Outside the hospital, Yu and Shiho proclaim that they won't let anything get in the way of their goals and eventually accept each other, forming somewhat of a friendship. In the vampire city of Sangunam, an announcer warns of the humans gathering and attempting to expand their territory, even attacking and killing their fellow vampires in the process. With this, Cruel declares war against humanity, proclaiming that the vampires will preserve the balance of the world. Cruel Tapes declares war against the Japanese Imperial Demon Army, accusing them of experimenting on the Seraph of the End. While watching the events unfold, Mika vows to rescue Yu. Meanwhile, during a meeting, Guren falls asleep, prompting General Tenri Hiragi, Shinoa's father, to reprimand him for his behavior. Unfazed, Guren walks out and ends up meeting Yu, who demands his cursed gear. Eventually, Guren agrees to give him a chance to make a contract with a demon and gain a cursed weapon. In another location, Mika ignores Farid's attempt at taunting him and returns to his childhood home where he lived with Yu and the rest of his family before becoming a vampire. However, he accidentally scares the new children living there with his new appearance. Later, Yu receives his test paper, which displays a 0, making him embarrassed, as Shinoa shows everyone his test paper. Guren then puts the students through a test of endurance by releasing his demonic weapon and pressuring the students with its aura. Yu, Yuuichirou, Shiho, and Shinoa are able to withstand it. Guren explains the contract ceremony, also noting how they must be determined to do anything, even if it means dying. Once they arrive in the restricted room, Guren explains that every weapon they see is the highest-ranking cursed weapon with Demon Kings sealed within them. He informs the boys that they must not give in to the demon's temptation if they wish to succeed. They each pick a weapon, aside from Shinoa. Yu chooses a katana-style sword and draws its blade, which begins the trial. An 8-year-old Yuuichirou witnesses the murder of his sister by vampires, who leave after killing her. Yuuichirou sees his sister's body, and when he speaks to her, the demon in the form of his sister informs him that she is replaying his deepest memory, and that she is dead. Meanwhile, an adolescent Shiho watches over his sister Mirai, who is similarly the demon in disguise, and she tells him he can leave his sister behind. At the same time, a child Yu is confronted by a demon in his orphanage, where the demon offers him power in exchange for revenge. Akane's voice warns Yuuichirou that he cannot have power without dedicating himself to revenge and his family, which is just an illusion by the demon, telling him to forget love. Still, Yu manages to successfully overcome the demon's temptation and sign a contract with it. The demon later reveals its name as Asuramaru and warns Yu not to trust humans. In the present, Yuuichirou confronts his own demon, who takes the form of his deceased sister and offers to earn his revenge for him. Initially, the demon manages to possess Yuuichirou, taking over his body and attacking his friends, but Yu manages to appeal to the possessed Yuuichirou, trusting that his friend will not attack him. This helps Yuuichirou break free from the demon's control and rush over to Yu to apologize for almost hurting him. Meanwhile, we see a vampire squadron flying in an aircraft carrier heading to Tokyo, with Mika present. Yu wakes up to his alarm clock, wears his military uniform, and heads to the subway where he meets Shinoa. She informs him that the vampires are planning to retake Shinjuku. After meeting with their squad leader, Guren, he introduces their new squad member Mitsuba Sangu, a veteran with a blazing personality. The group then heads out to complete their mission. While on the way to their destination, they encounter a young girl being attacked by a vampire. Yu disobeys orders and saves the girl, leading the squad into a battle with the vampires. Despite being scolded by Mitsuba for his actions, they succeed in defeating the vampires and escaping back to their base. The young girl thanks Yu for saving her, and although Mitsuba is gentle with the girl, she still notes that she can't stand Yu. Later, while taking a shower, we see a flashback of Mitsuba's past where, like Yu, she disobeyed her orders, which led to one of her team members sacrificing himself for her to live. She now lives with that regret and trauma in her heart. After things calm down, the young girl reveals information about the vampires that held her captive, and soon enough, the squad heads to the location revealed, intending to save the children kept there. The squad enters Omotsando Station to face the 7 vampires. They see humans treated as livestock, who although not held forcefully, cannot escape because of the monsters outside. They manage to kill a few of the vampires, but to their surprise, they find out that the girl who gave them the information had deceived them after the vampires threatened to kill her family. They are then ambushed by even more vampires. Mitsuba is grabbed by one of the vampires in the ambush, but Yu manages to save her while the rest hold off the remaining vampires. After killing them, they meet with army soldiers, and the child who apologized for tricking them is reunited with her family. Shinoa mockingly notes that Mitsuba is falling in love with Yu, but Mitsuba angrily denies it. Yu then reveals that he was held in a vampire city when he was little, but tells Mitsuba not to poke her nose in his past. Still, Mitsuba thanks him for saving her. The squad finds an army Hummer, and after Shiho hot-wires it, they drive along the road to their destination, but eventually encounter a tall red-haired progenitor vampire armed with a first-class weapon. They try to attack the vampire by crashing the Hummer into him, but he easily stops the car with one hand, Superman style. As the squad prepares to fight and protect each other, Yu manages to stop a sneak attack from the vampire aimed at Shinoa and knocks the sword out of the vampire's hand, impressing him. However, 2 more noble vampires appear, and the group realizes their situation is dire. Shinoa notes that their only option is to fight at full power, releasing their curse mark and letting the demons almost possess them. Thankfully for them, the vampires who introduced the progenitor as Crowley Youthford inform him that the 7th progenitor is awaiting his arrival. Dejected, Crowley agrees to spare the squad and leaves, but reveals that he could have instantly killed all of them, leaving the team in shock and horror at the knowledge that they almost died. Vampire helicopters approach the Shinjuku walls, where the Japanese Imperial Demon Army soldiers use their bows and arrows to keep the helicopters at bay. The commander warns that if the vampires make it through, they are done for. But as he ends his sentence, he's shocked to see a cargo plane filled with explosives heading directly for them. Meanwhile, Yu and his squad are in a building in Shinjuku where they hear announcements of the vampire attack. Shinoa and Mitsuba explain to Yuuichirou that the gear the soldiers are using is called enchanted gear, a lesser version of cursed gear. The humans and vampires clash, but with Yu's and the others' help, they manage to win. Later, Corporal Nagai thanks the team for their help and orders them to head west for vampire extermination while he takes care of the defense line. Elsewhere, Guren spots Mika and Farid overlooking the battlefield. Farid mentions that drinking directly from a human is outlawed in Sangunum. Mika recalls Sangunum 4 years ago when he refused to drink human blood after becoming a vampire. But out of hunger and desperation, he uncontrollably had to feed on Cruel's vampire blood, becoming her direct servant. While heading to their destination, Shinoa presents some pills to the team, informing them that this is a quick way for them to increase their strength. 1 pill amps them by 1.5 times, while 2 pills crank it up to 1.8 times with serious side effects. However, taking 3 pills will directly cause internal damage and kill them. The group is separated in a helicopter attack, but they manage to escape underground in the abandoned subway. Meanwhile, Mika sees an explosion, and one of the vampires he was with turns to ash after someone attacked him. He looks up to see Guren standing amidst the smoke, preparing to engage him in combat. Finding themselves in the subway, Yu and Shinoa realize they've been separated from Yuuichirou, Shiho, and Mitsuba in the attack, and they still have the unconscious corporal with them. Thankfully, Shiho calls to them from behind the rubble, saying that they're alright. Yu tells them that they'll split up momentarily while they escort the corporal to the medic camp, after which they'll meet again at the defense line. They quickly agree and part ways. After killing the vampire next to Mika, Gurren points his blade at him, slightly frustrated that he didn't manage to kill the commander instead. Meanwhile, Farid tells Mika that the humans seem to have dispatched their elite soldiers, the Moon Demon Company. And indeed, shortly later, Gurren's squad and the rest of the Moon Demon Company arrive to fight the vampires. Having arrived at the medical area, Yu recalls fantasizing with Mika about escaping to the outside world without vampires, but now he can only bitterly think that the outside world is nothing like they envisioned. Shinoa brings him out of the daydream, informing him that the corporal is alright, and they can now leave and meet with the rest of their squad. While walking, they overhear a conversation between some of the higher-ups and realize that the rest of their squad is in trouble in Central Park. Without wasting a second, Yu decides to head to Central Park and help his friends. Shinoa tries to stop Yu since they're needed more on the front line, but she realizes he has already made up his mind, and she can only follow Yu to provide backup for their friends. At the Shinjuku 5th Street intersection, Gurren manages to kill a few more vampires while fighting alongside Sayuri, and after a brief pause, the two plan to attack the commander. Meanwhile, Farid watches over the battle in wonder and orders Lacus and Rinne to hold off the rest of the humans while he toys with Gurren. He then suggests that he and Mika fight Gurren together, but Mika states that he can fight Gurren alone and proclaims that he'll regret pointing his sword at him. While running to Central Park, Yu thanks Shinoa for coming with him, but she says that since they're like family, of course she'll come to protect her family. Soon enough, they reach the park to see Yoichi, Shiho, and Mitsuba surrounded by vampires, exhausted but managing to hold on and fight back. One of the vampires manages to take Shiho by surprise and almost lands a hit on him. Thankfully, Yu steps in and blocks the vampire's sneak attack, while Shinoa counterattacks the rest of the vampires. After defeating all of the vampires, the squad can finally recuperate, although Shiho tells Yu that their orders were to assist the front line and questions why the two of them are here. Yu notes that although he trusts them and knows of their strength, he will always come to their aid and never abandon them, no matter what. Having regained their stamina, the squad now proceeds to their task, prepared to kill every vampire. Meanwhile, back at the front line, Gurren praises Mika's strength after he comes out unharmed in the aftermath of an explosion that manages to demolish a whole skyscraper, but reveals that it was just a distraction for the trap laid by Shigure. The combined surprise attacks momentarily overwhelm Mika, giving Gurren the opening to deal the finishing blow. However, at the last moment, Farid steps in to block Gurren and swats him away like a ragdoll.
Hi, Mika-chan.
Realizing that they're outmatched, Gurren decides to take another pill, knowing that they have no chance of survival otherwise. Still, before he can do so, Mika attacks again, not giving Gurren the chance to use his pills. Thankfully, Yu's squad arrives promptly, and Shinoa orders everyone to take their pills, rescue Gurren, and quickly retreat. Before they can reach in time, Mika stabs Gurren, and in a blinding rage, Yu charges at Mika, managing to pierce him with his cursed gear. However, while looking at each other, Mika and Yu can only stare at the other in shock as Yu realizes the vampire he stabbed is his brother. Upon seeing Mika fighting Gurren, Yu refuses to activate his curse and kill his only remaining family member. He then apologizes to Mika for abandoning him back then, as he barely managing to stop himself from breaking down. But Mika comforts him, saying that he did nothing wrong and promises to save Yu from the humans. Meanwhile, Gurren and the rest of his squad scold Yu for letting the enemy survive. Farid steps in, adding fuel to the fire, saying that he can save Yu from the humans by turning him into a vampire as well. However, Mika is enraged upon hearing this, threatening to kill Farid if he so much as lays a finger on Yu. Farid claims that he was just joking and instead promises to take care of the other humans while Mika rescues Yu. Mika notes how Yu has made new friends, but states that Yu is too kind and that these humans are taking advantage of him, since he has witnessed the greed of humans firsthand. Soon, Crowley and his servants arrive as well. Seeing this, Gurren orders a retreat, but Farid blocks Yu's path. Seeing his childhood captor, Yu starts attacking wildly, losing all forms of composure. Witnessing this, Gurren rushes back, trying to support Yu, and before you know it, the vampires engage the humans in all-out combat. Soon, Farid manages to take Yu by surprise and grabs him. Thankfully, just as he previously said, Mika attacks Farid, managing to cut off his arm. In the confusion, Mika picks up Yu and runs away. A short distance away, the two start talking, and while Yu asks in apprehension if Mika is still human, Mika asks Yu to come with him, claiming that the humans are just using him. However, once Yu sees his teammates and friends being drained of blood by the other vampires, he throws Mika to the ground, refusing to abandon the only friends he has made. In his rage and desperation to save them, something sinister within him awakens. One of his eyes turns bloodshot. Meanwhile, in his inner world, Yu asks his demon, Asurumaru, if she's trying to possess him, but she denies it, claiming she has nothing to do with it. Instead, she tells him to look at the sky and confirms that Mika's words are true. The humans are planning to take advantage of something within him. We then see trumpets lowering from the clouds, with angel-like creatures flying toward Yu. Asurumaru eerily states that the monster within Yu is about to be released. Back in the real world, Yu starts screaming out in agony as his face morphs from the pain, and the right side of his body grows a devil-like wing covered and dripping in black miasma. Guren smugly looks on, while Mika and Shinoa realize that the humans were indeed experimenting on Yu. Having lost all sense of self and reason, Yu indiscriminately attacks Mika, sending him flying. In the next moment, he turns to Crowley. Surprisingly, a single swipe of Yu's sword is now enough to destroy a whole city block, and even forces a progenitor vampire like Crowley to avoid and dodge his attacks. Not only that, but Yu's speed and reflexes are now on par with Crowley, dragging him around like a sack of potatoes. He even manages to parry every single attack with no difficulty and overwhelms Crowley with his attacks instead. Although forced to retreat, Crowley seems unharmed and only complains that the humans created a scary monster like Yu. Ferret even questions Guren, but the latter refuses to reveal anything. Still, Ferret guesses that this must be the result of the human experiments they have been conducting. Unfortunately, in the mayhem, Yu loses sight of Crowley and spots Shinoa, attacking her instead, disarming her and almost dealing a killing strike. Thankfully, Mika steps between them and receives the blow instead. With a last-minute call, Guren tells Shinoa that she can still bring Yu back. Having no other option, Shinoa dashes to Yu, managing to hug him and call out to him, begging him to return to normal. Although just barely, Yu manages to stop himself from harming Shinoa and transforms back to normal after vomiting the black liquid within him. Afterward, he faints in Shinoa's lap. Guren then reveals to Ferret that they were only trying to stall for time. In the next moment, we see Major General Shinya Hiragi aiming his cursed rifle at Ferret and firing an attack that releases flame tigers, almost managing to kill Ferret. As the dust settles, we see the rest of the Imperial Army, along with Lieutenant General Kirito Hiragi, having arrived to provide reinforcements. As the conflict comes to an end, Shinoa, with an unconscious Yu on her lap, turns to Guren and states that she has some questions for him. However, he nonchalantly walks away, telling her not to waste her breath because he won't answer anything. Back at the base, Shinoa enters an underground area and visits a restricted area guarded by 2 soldiers. Initially, they deny her entry, but she still asks what this hidden facility is used for, and one of the soldiers confirms that it's a lab used to conduct vampire and human experiments. After taking out an elaborate pocket watch with the Hiragi crest, proving that she's part of the Hiragi family, she asks for entry once more, and this time the soldiers are forced to oblige. Before leaving, one of the soldiers asks Shinoa why someone from the Hiragi family like herself would remain at the rank of sergeant. She casually states that she's not interested in participating in the army's power struggles, as that's the reason her sister died in the first place. Inside the facility, she sees what looks like an endless corridor of cells, each holding multiple feeble vampire captives. Further inside, she spots a door and hears painful screams coming from behind it. Peeking inside, she witnesses a very advanced and high-tech laboratory filled with scientists, carrying out various tests on what looks like vats and vials of blood. Entering one of the offices, she sees Guren silently reading a report on some test results. Guren dismisses her without even looking, but she disobeys and approaches him directly, stating that Yu is still in a coma and asking what he's planning to do to him. Looking at the pills on the table, Shinoa thinks back to when he ordered her to give Yu a special blend of drugs, supposedly because his cursed gear was unique. But she now realizes that was simply just a cover-up. Guren avoids her questions and simply says that human experimentation is the only way for a weak species like them to survive in this apocalyptic world. He even reminds her that countless human lives were used so that her sister could complete her research and development on the cursed gear. With that, he sits back down and orders her to leave without hearing anything else she has to say. However, before she leaves, he tells her that the drugs take 5 days to wear off, so Yu should awaken soon. He ends by saying that if she really cares for Yu, she should be at his side when he wakes up. In Yu's hospital bed, Shinoa realizes that she might be falling in love with him. Meanwhile, we see a flashback to the aftermath of the battle, where Mika tries to grab Yu, but is stopped by an annoyed Ferret who reveals he was playing with Mika all along, treating him like a mere child. Back at the Sangunum, we find out that the vampires have detoxification pods capable of removing curses. As Mika exits the pod, he finds out that although he's still a vampire, he can still shed tears like a human. In the changing room, Lacus and Renee try to spark a conversation with Mika, but he ignores them as usual. Surprisingly, the pair reveals that the humans are researching forbidden magic called Seraph of the End, which supposedly has the power to destroy the whole world. What's more, they reveal that the vampire's real goal in attacking the humans was to retrieve Yu and the power within him. Awakening from his coma, Yu barely manages to hold back his tears of happiness after finding out that his brother, the person he thought had died for him to escape, is still alive. Shinoa enters the room shortly after, amused at seeing Yu cry, but she recounts to him the events following his blackout after he reveals that he doesn't remember anything that happened after meeting Mika. She also reveals that Mika was taken away by the vampires after he passed out, and tells him not to even think about trying to attack the vampires by himself. However, Yu notes that for now, knowing that Mika is still alive is all that matters to him. Yu then leans in close to Shinoa, touching her cheek and moving her hair to the side. He asks if she's alright from her neck injury, while a flustered and embarrassed Shinoa confirms that she's fine. Soon the rest of his squad members come in, interrupting their romantic moment, and start joking around with each other. Yu interrupts them, saying he's glad that they're alive and grateful to have friends like them. Later, while looking at the full moon, Mika and Yu both promise at the same time that they will save the other. Surprisingly, we end by seeing Gurren sign a letter and head out, while Farid waits atop the roof of a building, handing all of the vampires' research data to his unrevealed partner, noting how serious this mysterious individual can be sometimes.
そうは思わない?僕の楽しいパートナーくん。
Shinoa and Gurren engaged in a heated confrontation during which Shinoa confronted Gurren about the death of her sister, Ayumi. Shinoa revealed that Ayumi had feelings for Gurren and asked him what his plans were for Yu. Gurren coldly admitted to killing Ayumi and revealed that her soul resided within his imperial arm.
俺が殺した。
He asserted that he wasn't possessed and didn't care if Shinoa believed him or not. After the tense exchange, Gurren left and Shinoa went to find Yu at the library, where he was reading about vampires. Shinoa advised Yu to rest as per the doctor's advice and then broached the subject of turning Mika back into a human. Yu became intrigued and listened attentively as Shinoa explained that common vampires couldn't turn humans, only nobles had that power. This meant that Mika must have been chosen by a noble. Despite Shinoa's willingness to help, she didn't know how to reverse the vampire transformation. Nonetheless, Yu appreciated her maturity and concern. Shortly after, an announcement came that Yu was summoned to the head office by the Hiragi family. Shinoa urged him to be careful, as the Hiragas could be intimidating. Before leaving, Yu encountered Gurren, who warned him not to betray his friends to the Hiragas. Yu assured him that he wouldn't betray anyone.
違いしてるぞ。俺はお前の仲間じゃない。要するに神だな。
Inside the office, Yu found out that Mitsuba had been promoted due to her contributions in the fight against vampires. He encouraged her and discovered that Shinoa was also a Hiragi. During a loyalty test, Yu ended up facing Lieutenant General Hiragi Kirito, Shinya, and Aoi. Despite his best efforts, Yu was no match for them in combat. They suspected Yu of being a spy and interrogated him, threatening to harm his friends if he didn't comply. Yu begged them to stop and promised to answer their questions truthfully. Afterward, Kirito asked Yu to join him, but Yu refused, expressing his belief that Gurren had some principles unlike Kirito. Later, Yu approached Gurren and questioned whether he saved him in the past as an experiment, only to use him now. Gurren assured him that they were like a family and promised to help him save Mika.
Stop the cap!
Yu asked Gurren to teach him how to use the Imperial Arm, which was part of Gurren's plan. Meanwhile, Mika struggled with his thirst for blood, and Farid offered him a child's blood. However, Mika resisted the temptation and saved the child. Farid promised to let Mika attend the meeting the next day. Shinoa and Mitsuba were instructing the rest of their group on how to use Imperial arms. During their training, Yuuichirou displayed exceptional control over his cursed power, impressively defeating 4 enemies. Yu felt jealous and questioned Shinoa if she had given Yuuichirou special training. Shinoa explained that Yuichi's control was always remarkable from the start. Later, Yu offered his blood to his demon, Asuramaru, but instead of losing control, he fell unconscious. Shinoa and Yuuichirou remained tight-lipped about what happened to Yu during a past battle, per Shinoa's instructions. Shinoa grew suspicious of Shinoa, wondering if she was keeping something from Yu and using him for her own purposes. Shinoa promised to explain after their training. During the training, Yu experienced intense pain as he made contact with his demon. He had a nightmare where he saw himself as a child, rejected and attacked by his parents, but he managed to remain in control because of a promise he made to Mika. When he woke up, Yu found his friends surrounding him, and he declared that he had successfully formed a contract with his inner demon. Meanwhile, the vampire nobles observed Yu going berserk and believed that the humans had succeeded in creating a Seraph of the End. Farid summoned Mika to a meeting, which surprised Queen Cruel, as she had supposedly killed all children with Seraph of the End factors years ago. Cruel discussed her plan to destroy the Japanese Imperial Demon Army with the other nobles. After the meeting, she confronted Farid about his intentions, unable to kill him due to potential leaks of sensitive information. Shinoa went through the same ritual to form an agreement with her demon, and her friends prepared for the worst as she fought her demon while unconscious. Shinoa faced a nightmare in which her sister, Mirai, was suffering from a deadly disease and needed to be killed to save the group. However, Shinoa resisted and ultimately made the contract, inspired by Yu's selflessness. Upon waking up, Shinoa challenged Yu to a friendly contest of strength, and they impressed Shinoa and Mitsuba with their special abilities. Later, while exploring the library, they discovered that someone had erased all data concerning their pasts. Shinoa had a foreboding feeling about this development. In the vampire's territory, a letter was delivered through a pigeon and was shown to Kirito by Owari. Kirito immediately summoned Gurren after reading the letter. Meanwhile, Yu, Yoichi, and Shiho joined Shinoa and Mitsuba for breakfast, but they found it burnt. Shiho taught them how to make an omelet, and they had breakfast together. Shinoa explained that they wanted to discuss two important matters: Yu's past as a test subject in an experiment that caused him to lose control on the battlefield and almost harm Shino, and their concerns about Gurren's trustworthiness and hidden motives. Yu was taken aback by this revelation. Gurren met with Kirito at a location where 3 vampires were being held captive. Kirito revealed that he had found a fast way to turn vampires into demons and ordered Gurren to kill the captives. However, Gurren refused to be ordered around, confident that Kirito wouldn't kill him while he was still useful. Kirito questioned Gurren about how he found Yu, Yoichi, and Shiho 3 black blades. Gurren claimed it was luck and seemed unfazed by Kirito's threats. Kirito expressed his plan to eliminate all the vampires in Japan, along with any human organizations, and establish the world under the rule of the demon army. He instructed Gurren to lead his team and 100 troops to Nagoya, where 10 vampire nobles were located, with the aim of killing them and seizing the area while Kirito prepared for the final battle. Feeling saddened and alone, Yu was comforted by Shinoa, who assured him that accidents happen and she was alive and well. Yu requested Shinoa's support during their attack on the vampires to prevent him from losing control again. He expressed that his friends were like family to him, and he still couldn't forget about Mika, who was also a part of his family. Shinoa and the others pledged their loyalty and commitment to the mission of bringing back their lost family members and preparing for battle as the Shinoa squad. Mika, dealing with his intense thirst for blood, sought out Cruel, who allowed him to drink her blood while they embraced. Mika asked for forgiveness for his behavior, and Cruel granted his request for more blood. She revealed her intention to protect both Yu and Mika because she needed 2 Seraphs of the End. She informed Mika about the impending war between humans and vampires and his secret mission to hide from both sides to protect Yu, a mission to which Mika agreed. Gurren planned for the upcoming war, and Shinoa reported to him that Yu and Shiho had completed their weapon training. Gurren assigned a mission to Shinoa, instructing her to meet him at the staging base the next day, as they were going to confront the vampires in Nagoya. Mika was also making his way to Nagoya. In a lab, Kirito was overseeing an experiment involving Mirai. He ordered the experiment to begin. Shinobu and her group were traveling in a jeep, but Shiho was frustrated with her awkward directions and asked where they were heading. They encountered a monster on the way, and Yu got off the jeep to defeat it. However, more monsters appeared, and they had to leave Yu behind while asking him to meet them in Abina. Yu was surprised and upset about this decision. Meanwhile, Gurren's squad was waiting for everyone to gather, and Maito was scouting the area. Suddenly, Shinya arrived in a luxury car, having overheard Kirito's conversation referring to them as sacrificial pawns. He came to offer aid to Gurren because he believed that merely 100 soldiers wouldn't be enough to kill the vampire nobles. Yu later joined his squad and expressed his anger at being left behind. Gurren explained the plan to the troops. Shinoa's group arrived late and hid to avoid being noticed. However, Gurren caught them and berated them in front of everyone. Yu stepped up and took the blame on himself. After Gurren's speech, Yu was called by Gurren, expecting to be scolded. But Gurren praised him for shouldering the blame alone for his team. Girin ordered Goshi to use an illusion spell to scare Shinoa and her group, but it turned out to be a punishment for letting you come alone. Girin expressed doubt about Shinoa's leadership skills and decided to engage in battle, with only 3 members from Girin's squad, including Girin himself, Shinya, and Mito, fighting. Shinoa began strategizing with her squad. The battle commenced, and Shinya disrupted the enemy formations as the fight began. Although Yu impressed everyone with his responses to Girin's attacks, they still lost easily. Girin questioned how they would defend themselves against even stronger vampire nobles and suggested that they work on their teamwork to become stronger. Narumi objected to Girin's decision to bring the children on the battlefield, fearing they would be a liability. Girin ordered Narumi to take care of them and grouped Shinoa's squad with Narumi's squad, introducing them to each other. Girin announced that the time was up and they should prepare to depart for Nagoya. Shinoa apologized to her squad for their loss due to her incompetency as a commander, but Yu and others motivated and supported her. Meanwhile, Mika and other vampires were taking children to Nagoya as a tribute to the nobles. Kai Luke offered Mika some blood, but he refused, suffering from bloodthirst and remembering what Cruel had told him. He even attacked a child but stopped himself in time. Shinoa's squad was waiting for the mission to begin when Narumi arrived to review their plan. The objective was to simultaneously kill 8 nobles, and failure would be disastrous if the nobles were grouped. Each noble had a 15-man team assigned to take them down. Narumi grew angry with Yu's nonchalant attitude and lack of seriousness, which made the squad feel uneasy and question their trust in him. He emphasized that one small mistake could cost the lives of 100 soldiers. Shinoa apologized for Yu's behavior and assured the squad that they would not let them down. Yu also apologized to Narumi, explaining that he might not remember the name of the enemy, but he remembered the names of the people he needed to protect. The squad was hiding in a building, waiting for their target to arrive at the usual time. Yuuichirou was nervous as it was his first sniper mission, but Shinya reassured him, reminding him that they had a combat team ready if they failed. 5 minutes left until their target's arrival, the mission began. Lukal Wesker, their target, was accompanied by Esther Lee. Lukal was frustrated about following Cruel's orders since he was loyal to Leskar. Suddenly, they noticed 2 attacks heading towards Lukal, and he used Esther as a shield to defend himself. Narumi ordered everyone to take the curse enhancement pill and prepare for battle. Lukal retaliated, attacking the tower where Shinya and Yuuichirou were positioned. Shinya instructed Yuuichirou to kill as many noble vampires as possible before falling back. The combat squad moved forward to attack Lukal, but he proved to be incredibly powerful, overpowering them. Though they managed to hold him momentarily, he cut his hand to free himself. Shiho disobeyed Narumi's order to maintain formation, believing they could never defeat Lukal that way. Shinoa suggested letting Yu and Shiho do as they pleased, trusting they had a plan. Shiho began provoking Lukal, and the plan worked as their target charged at them. Yu delivered a fatal strike, and Inoue attempted to finish him, but Lukal chose to stab himself with her sword to avoid being killed by humans. They celebrated their victory over a noble and wondered how the other squads were doing. Meanwhile, Girin defeated a noble named Mel Stefano single-handedly, leaving his squad worried about what would happen if he died. Girin explained that he left Shinya in charge for that very reason. Shortly after, a wounded squad leader named Kusunoki arrived, reporting that his team of 45 members was defeated. 19 were killed, and the rest were taken hostage, and the vampires demanded the commander's presence. Kusunoki apologized and expressed his honor to have fought alongside Girin before passing away. Girin instructed his squad to reunite with Narumi and Shinobu's squad, as their next target was Crowley Usford, who was waiting for them at the city hall. Horn intervened to stop Chess from killing the hostages and asked Crowley about his thoughts on the human attack. Crowley expressed concern that humans were progressing rapidly, suspecting a traitor among the vampires leaking information, possibly someone higher up. He showed them that the wounds inflicted by human weapons weren't regenerating and warned them to be cautious. Narumi and Shinoa's squad were waiting for other squads to join them. Aihara returned with nearly half of her squad wiped out but having completed the mission. Yu suggested they rest and guard the area. Girin and his squad also returned, and Narumi praised Shinoa's squad for their excellent performance. Girin then observed Aihara's squad, which had lost 8 members. Aihara blamed herself, but Girin explained they were all heading for another mission. Guren informed them that all 9 squads assigned to kill 3 nobles at the city hall were defeated, and 23 soldiers were taken hostage. He explained that their next mission would require more manpower to rescue their comrades and kill the nobles. Aihara wanted to join them, but Guren assigned her to guard duty and instructed the other squads that had returned to go to the airport. Guren, along with his squad, Narumi and Shinoa's squad, headed to the city hall to rescue the hostages. While Aihara was on guard duty, she noticed 2 helicopters carrying vampire nobles heading toward the city hall and instantly shot one down. The vampires attacked, and Mika grabbed Aihara, wanting to ask about you. However, she activated code 284, and all the vampires took poison pills to commit suicide. Mika prevented Aihara from taking the poison pill, and she pretended to be dead when the other vampires arrived. They learned that humans had killed some nobles and were shocked by this revelation. They decided to head to the city hall, unaware of Aihara's act. She then revealed to Mika that you had gone to the city hall, and if the other vampires found out, everyone would be killed. Mika staged an act of beating Aihara to extract information. She provided fake locations of their comrades, and the vampires believed her information. After they left, Aihara asked Mika to kill her, but he refused and left. The other vampires ordered Mika to bring her back, but instead, he killed her to spare her from further torture. Mika decided to investigate separately as he couldn't trust the information given by humans, and asked for 5 soldiers to accompany him to the city hall. Guren was observing the vampires through binoculars from a building, and they had taken some of their friends as hostages. You insisted on making the first priority to save the hostages, but Narumi cautioned that it might be a trap. Guren explained that they needed to provoke the vampires, as their 3 main targets were powerful nobles, including Crowley Usford, Chess Bell, and Horn Skull. They had to consider their own safety first and might have to abandon the hostages, which angered Yu. Shinoa calmed him down, reminding him that Colonel Guren had to make tough decisions for their safety. Narumi informed them that their mission was to distract the vampires until the main unit arrived and engage the vampires in combat. They all took their positions, and Yuuichirou spotted one of the nobles, Crowley, on the 5th floor. Yuuichirou mentioned that they had encountered him while heading towards Shinjuku. Shinya presented 2 choices: either kill the hostages to spare them from torture, which Yu vehemently opposed, or divide into groups to distract the nobles while the other group rescued the hostages, knowing it would be risky. Narumi chose the first plan, as they couldn't defeat the nobles in a direct confrontation. Guren devised a plan, deciding that he, Shinya, and the rest of his team would attack the nobles while Shinoa and Narumi's group rescued the hostages. They had only 5 minutes to rescue their comrades before leaving the battlefield and rendezvousing at Nagoya Airport for extraction. They began the attack, using an illusion spell to make it seem like hundreds of men were attacking. Guren and Shinya confronted Crowley inside the building, but he easily overpowered them, injuring them severely.
Checkmate.
However, they stuck to their plan, and Shinoa's group insisted on helping Guren and Shinya. Shinoa agreed and took the lead in their attempt to rescue the injured commanders. Meanwhile, as Guren and Shinya tried to escape, Crowley and 2 other noble vampires, Chess and Horn, surrounded them. Guren managed to create an opening and escape with Shinya, who was badly injured. While fleeing, Crowley attacked Guren, inflicting a fatal blow. Guren instructed Shinya to escape and lead the others, as he couldn't make it. Just as Crowley was about to strike the final blow, Yu emerged from the floor, attacking Crowley and catching him off guard. Yu's attack was defended by Crowley, but he persisted, using the Asura cannon. However, Chess and Horn stepped in to protect Crowley. Shinoa intervened, ordering everyone to retreat, though Yu was unwilling to leave Guren behind. Guren, on the brink of death, urged Yu to follow the plan. Crowley recognized Yu from their encounter in Shinjuku when he lost control. Yu still refused to give up on Guren, but his teammates prevented him from advancing, as the enemy's backup had already arrived. They retreated, with Norito using his illusion magic to stop the enemies from pursuing them. Guren's group attempted to rescue him, but they were outmatched by the enemies, and Guren ordered them to retreat, planning to keep him alive until Ferret arrived. Kirito was preparing for the attack from the vampire nobles, with Seishiro keeping an eye on him as per his father's orders. They had a heated conversation, with Seishiro expressing displeasure at Kirito not following their father's orders and questioning their departure, and who would save Kanto. Kirito ordered Seishiro to be imprisoned until they returned, suggesting he might be used later. Yu was still distraught over Guren and remembered their past moments together. He refused to give up on his family and decided to save Guren alone. Despite Shinoa's attempts to stop him, he consumed more curse enhancement pills, causing him to suffer from extreme pain and bleed. His group tried to take away the pills, but he threw them away and lost consciousness. Shinoa was shocked after checking his heartbeat. Mika reached Guren's territory and found it under attack. He killed Guren's subordinates and began searching for Yu. Meanwhile, Kirito watched the preparations before their departure and inquired about any reports from Guren. Sangu informed him that they said, "It's okay." Kirito laughed and ordered them to speed up as time was running short. Yu found himself in another dimension where he met Asuramaru and pleaded with her to grant him her powers to save Guren. However, Asuramaru had no intention of giving him power and instead wanted to take control of his body. She informed him that he was neither dead nor alive due to the trumpet the angels had fixed inside him, keeping him in this state. Asuramaru warned him not to approach the trumpet, as angels were even worse than devils. Despite her warnings, Yu moved towards it, and Asuramaru tried to stop him. Eventually, she agreed to grant him power, but only for 3 minutes. Upon waking up, Yu flew away at full speed, shocking his group members. Meanwhile, Chess was interrogating and torturing Guren, but Crowley prevented her from killing him yet. Yu arrived and attacked Chess, but Crowley defended against the attack, impressed by the sudden change in Yu's powers. He questioned if Yu was even human anymore. Despite Guren's warnings about the demon taking over, Yu remained determined to save him. He demanded more power from Asuramaru and turned half demon for another round. Timizuki intervened with the demon coffin, capturing Yu and forcing a retreat. Guren gave Yu his last order to survive. They regrouped at the fixed point as the enemy's reinforcements were arriving. Mika saw Cruel's group approaching and decided to act before they arrived. He recalled a childhood memory of talking to Yu about living together as a family, which motivated him further to charge forward and take on all obstacles. Naruto used an illusion spell to hinder Mika, but he pressed on, eventually collapsing after multiple attacks. However, he was motivated by Yu's bonds with his squad and managed to reach him. Yuuichi and Shinoa's squad stood their ground to defend Mika. Shinya fired a finishing blow on Mika, but Shinoa intervened and saved him, telling him to take Yu and escape, as Yu would be saddened if anything happened to him. The rest of Shinoa's squad protected her from an attacking member. Mika was shocked to witness such strong bonds in the outside world. Shinoa urged Mika to leave with Yu, and they would meet at the airport later. Mika took Yu and fled. Another member of the demon company attacked Shinoa, but Narumi stopped him and asked him to leave the company if he couldn't follow orders. As the enemy reinforcements arrived, Aoi and Kageyama were attacked. Shinya decided to retreat to avoid facing a noble. Shinya urged everyone to retreat to the airport, warning that if the vampire nobles arrived, they would all be killed. Narumi was mourning his fallen comrades, but Shinya pulled him away and they withdrew. Meanwhile, Mika, who was bleeding and carrying Yu, was losing strength and low on blood. He spotted a scared kid hiding and followed him into a ruin mart where other kids were seeking refuge. Mika caught the kid but stopped himself from drinking his blood when the kid called him a monster. Mika dragged Yu inside the mart for safety. In another dimension, Yu asked Asuramaru what happened after he lost consciousness. She explained that she could only see what Yu's eyes saw, so she didn't have much information. However, she mentioned that someone visited him while he was unconscious, calling Yu his family. Yu woke up and found Mika on the verge of death. Mika lost control and attacked Yu, but Yu managed to calm him down. Yu apologized to Mika for leaving him alone and blamed himself for Mika becoming a vampire. Mika revealed that drinking Yu's blood would turn him into a true vampire, but Yu didn't care as long as Mika was alive. After much debate, Yu convinced Mika to drink his blood, and Mika became a true vampire with red eyes. Yu told Mika about Guren's advice to stay alive, even if it was only for revenge, and that there must be someone in the world who will need their help. Mika shared with Yu how his friends had saved him and talked about the plan to meet at the airport. At the airport, the squads were shocked to find no helicopters for their rescue. Mika and Yu found a vehicle and headed towards the airport. Mika informed Yu about human organizations and vampires all over the world wanting to capture him due to an experiment conducted on him back at Bullied Orphanage, which had caused a disaster that wiped out all the adults. Mika proposed running away together to a place beyond the reach of the demon army and vampires, where they could live freely. Yu agreed to discuss the plan with his friends and seek their help. They saw spacecrafts arriving at the airport, and Kirito was watching a girl named Mirai, whom they had experimented on, surrounded by a black aura and kept in a cell. The situation at the airport was tense as the absence of helicopters and the mysterious letter from the Japanese Imperial Demon Army added to the group's anxiety, especially with the vampire army closing in on them. In the midst of this tension, Inui confronted Shinoa for her supposed betrayal and association with a vampire. The heated argument escalated, and Narumi also joined in, fueled by the loss of his comrades and a desire to seek revenge on Shinoa. Shinya intervened to prevent violence and dropped a bombshell. The mission was not planned by Giren but by Kirito, leaving everyone shocked. Narumi had had enough and decided to abandon the mission, vowing to follow only Lieutenant Giren's orders. Shinya rallied everyone to join him in this decision, and they were relieved to be united in their resolve to rescue Giren. Meanwhile, a vampire was torturing Giren, but he remained steadfast and unyielding. In another part of the story, Freyd informed Crowley about the revelation of noble locations, which led to betrayal within their ranks. Farad hinted at Giren's involvement and revealed that Giren was a half-demon, one step away from becoming a full-fledged demon. Amidst these events, Giren found himself in another dimension, seeking power from his inner demon, Mahiru. She granted him strength, and he returned to the real world, swiftly dispatching the vampire tormenting him. Giren then faced Cruel, who proved to be an overwhelming force. Their conversation hinted at a past deal between Cruel and Mahiru, which would impact the unfolding events. Giren disclosed that the Seraph of the End experiment would occur at the airport, prompting Cruel to order everyone to move there. The demon army's transportation plane arrived, with Kirito emerging from it. He appeared confident, claiming they would achieve total victory over the vampires. Shinya inquired about Kirito's plan, but Kirito kept it secret. A container emerged from the aircraft, unleashing arrow-like hands that attacked Shinya's entire team. Narumi's rage surged, and he confronted Kirito, who believed that this experiment would save countless lives and serve justice. Amidst the chaos, Yu's group tried to retreat, but vampire nobles blocked their path, initiating a fierce battle between humans and vampires. However, Shinya and Giren's group provided assistance, helping Shinoa's group and Mika escape from the onslaught. As they fled, Yu spotted Giren, ecstatic to see him alive. The situation remained precarious, and with so much at stake, their journey was far from over. During the intense battle, Giren attacked Yu, but Mika stepped in to defend him. The clash between the two was fierce, but Giren's skill proved to be on another level. Kirito gave the order to start the plan, and Giren revealed that the Seraph of the End was involved, commanding his sword to draw his blood. As the sword drank his blood, Giren began attacking both humans and vampires, shocking everyone around. Chaos ensued as Giren's attacks seemed unstoppable, and those arrows of blood started sucking the life force from both humans and vampires alike. The container that held Mirai, the captive girl, burst open, and she transformed into the fearsome demon of destruction, Abaddon. Blowing the trumpet, the land itself started shaking and changing as the dark power surged. Shinoa's anger flared as she witnessed her little sister's suffering, and she rushed to save her despite the danger. However, Kirito intercepted her and stabbed her, leaving her wounded. Yu and Mika launched an assault against Kirito, but Giren protected him. The confusion and pain in Yu's eyes were evident as he demanded answers from his trusted mentor. The situation grew increasingly dire as Abaddon's power caused destruction all around. It seemed like nothing could stop the impending disaster. Yu's heart was torn between saving his family and stopping the chaos unfolding before him. Nika, who had been carrying Yu, urged him to run with their friends. But Yu could not leave Mika behind, knowing he needed help too. Yu's determination to save everyone drove him to make a desperate decision. He realized that in order to defeat Abaddon, he needed more power. Drawing on his inner strength, he stabbed himself with his sword and entered another dimension, seeking the help of Asura Maru. In this otherworldly realm, Asura Maru warned him of the consequences of using the trumpet's power and the risk of losing his humanity. But Yu was resolute, willing to make any sacrifice to protect his friends and loved ones. Returning to the battlefield, Yu unleashed a tremendous surge of power as he transformed into the King of Salt. The surrounding area turned to salt as the destructive force of Abaddon was neutralized. However, Asurumaru interfered again, turning Yu into a demon to stop him from causing further harm. Yu's vision blurred as he fell unconscious, leaving his friends and comrades in disbelief at the sacrifice he made to protect them. Mika, Cruel, and the others were left to deal with the aftermath of the battle, still reeling from the events that had unfolded. Despite the odds, they managed to escape with Yu's unconscious body in tow. The demon army and the vampires were in disarray, trying to understand the implications of what had just occurred. A significant amount of time passed, allowing everyone to heal and recover from the traumatic events. A sense of resolve and unity grew among the surviving members of both the demon army and the vampires. They knew that they had to put aside their differences and work together to face the greater threats that lay ahead. As they gathered again, tensions between the human and vampire factions were put on hold as they faced a common enemy. The shared goal of retrieving Mirai and stopping the dark forces from causing further destruction united them. The day of reckoning had arrived, and all the forces converged on the battlefield once more. The fate of their world hung in the balance as the final confrontation drew near. Yu's sacrifice had set into motion a chain of events that would test the limits of their strength, resolve, and trust in one another. In the midst of all the chaos and darkness, hope still burned brightly. Shinoa, Mika, Narumi, and their comrades stood united, ready to face the challenges ahead and save their world from impending doom. The power of friendship, love, and sacrifice would be their beacon of light in the darkest of times.